What is happening, you beautiful bastards? Welcome back to another week. This week, we talked to a gentleman named Tim Heale. Tim is an older man, and he's lived quite the life. And
Yes.
like a lot of older men, he wants to have some means to share his stories with his children.
And I would caution anyone listening that if you've ever had a conversation with an older gentleman, their storytelling can be a little slow. So this is a slower pace episode, and be prepared for that
But it's totally worth it.
Yeah, he's not a fast talker, but the things he has to talk about are well worth hearing.
And so Tim specialized in PSYOPS, and a lot of people probably don't know what PSYOPS is anymore.
No, it's kind of maybe it's a bygone era. What they have now, the modern equivalent, it's technically PSYOPS, but it's a different animal than it used to be back then, especially in Tim's day. He spent a lot of time in the Middle East performing these psychological operations. For those of you who didn't know what PSYOPS was, and it's kind of a way to connect with the people in a region that your military is occupying. There are other nefarious purposes for it, but Tim was the nice guy. He wasn't the one doing the bad stuff.
What is happening, you beautiful bastards? I don't know how many years you were doing it. You said over 7 operations that you did PSYOPS.
Yeah.
But I think there are a lot of people who don't even know what PSYOPS is anymore.
Well, funny enough, I gave a talk on Friday evening in my yacht club, and the presentation was all about my time in PSYOPS or psychological operations. I like to term it propaganda, lies, and deception.
I was going to say that's what most people probably know it as. Yeah. I mean, it had the name of PSYOPS. I want to say it was what, in the 90s? They still calling it PSYOPS nowadays?
Well, I actually just found out the other day that my old unit, it wasn't disbanded, but it was renamed and went into 77 Brigade in around about 2014, 2015.
Yeah.
After we finished the fighting ops in Afghanistan. And now I believe that they've retermed it influence operations.
Yeah, it's got to be a little bit more PC.
Yeah, I mean, they did that back in the early or very late 90s, early 2000s. For some reason, people get into a hysteria about psychological operations. So they renamed the group 15 UK Info Support Group.
Yeah, of course.
Which went down like a cup of cold sick.
So what years were you active?
I was recruited onto the group in 1999.
Oh, okay.
Well, I was actually, I had the first interview in 1998. The unit had just been formed as a formed unit in the UK. Prior to that, it was a shadow unit consisting of 2 officers, a lieutenant colonel and a captain, down at Ashford, which was the defence or the Army Intelligence Corps home, until they moved up to Chicksands, which used to be a US Air Force base just outside Bedford. So I moved up there in sort of mid-late 90s.
So did you, when you were doing this, was it did you go mostly Afghanistan? Did you go all over the place?
Oh, no. So I had the first interview in back end of 98, and I was taken onto the group in early 1999. The reason I was taken on is I had a bit of a background in print. So I used to work occasionally with my wife's company. I mean, she worked for a company printers, and occasionally when they had a big job on and I had to run through the night, I'd go in and help out and mind a Heidelberg single color press. So I understood the print process and all the rest of it. So that was one of the skills they wanted. But I suspect the main skill they wanted from me was I could drive trucks all the way up to Arctics and wagon and drags. So they had.
So is that what they used you for mostly?
Well, no, I mean, we're different in the British military.
Yeah.
We multitask. When I've worked with the Americans, particularly the PSYOPS guys from Fort Bragg, they single task. They get one job. They're either a printer or they're a designer or they're a tactical guy. They don't multitask. Where with us in the British military, we have to multitask because we don't have the manpower or resources to be able to.
The Army has so many damn people. The U.S. Army has so many damn people. They don't have to multitask. I was in the Marine Corps. We multitask. Like you could be a Humvee driver and do another job. Like that's how it worked. Because guess what? Your tool, we're putting you to work.
Yeah. So when they put us onto the when I came onto the group, before I got to the group, I went and did the MySOC course, the Military Psychological Operations course at Chicksands. So I had a really good idea. It's a 2-week course, and I had a really good grounding in what the discipline was. So then I knew exactly what I was going to get myself into.
Now, I don't know if you can talk about it, but what was that 2 weeks like while you were in there?
Oh, it's great. I mean, I ended up actually delivering on the course. So it starts off, the first day of the course, everybody turns up, does the normal thing, introduces themselves on the course, where they come from, what they do. And then they go into the course itself, and we start off with what psychological operations is. So for the British military, it's effectively plan psychological operations against a known target audience to affect a change in attitude and behaviours of that target audience to achieve political and military objectives. And that's the bottom line. So it's just about changing people's mindset and their attitudes towards us when we're on operations. And then the course goes into planning cycle, what we do to support the commander's mission, and then we break down into syndicates, and we work in syndicates on looking at different operational scenarios and come up with plans, etc. And from that drops out all the other tasks. So you come up with a product action worksheet that says what the mission is, what the product's required, how we're going to deliver it, what it needs to be, whether it's a radio product, whether it's a printed product, whether it's a TV product, that sort of thing. So, and then we go away, and then we develop that side of it. Not so much on the planner's side, but on a later course, there was an operator's course. You get into the weeds of it. From the planner's course, from the military psychological operation course, they keep the PAWS, the product action worksheets, to pass down to their next course, which is the operator's course. So you've got, then you break down into different syndicates, and you've got guys that are doing designing the product, whether it be a print product or a radio script. And then once it goes up and goes through the kind of the approval process, so it goes off to the political officer, the lawyers, the legal officers, before it sort of gets up to the commander, who has ultimate sign off on the product.
How long does it take to go through that process?
Well, it can take as long as a piece of string, basically, because you have to go through the target audience analysis. You have to work out what's likely to work, what's not going to work on the given target audience.
Now, were these large scale operations, or were they smaller operations with like a larger goal, like a large scale goal?
Well, at that time, the unit had formed, and there was a small team that went out to Bosnia.
Yeah.
And they set up in Bosnia a commercial radio station. They called it Radio Oxygen. And there was a pretty much an individual augmented team that went out and started conducting PSYOPS, basically. So they had a few guys that were working on the print side of it, and what they came up with is a magazine.
Mm-hmm.
They directed at the Serb population, and it was just a glossy magazine with all the normal stuff you find about sort of pop stars and movie stars and that sort of thing. And in amongst that, they would put in our messages. So
when they put in your messages, were they subliminal, or are they're right out in front?
No, some of it was straight up in your face. You knew where it was coming from. You knew these guys were trying to get you on their side. And a lot of it was just bloody mainly information. It was just giving out information. When we got down into Kosovo, we were initially doing products that were warning people about don't go near the mass graves. If you know about the mass graves, report it to the authorities so the authorities can investigate it without disturbing the evidence, etc. And I went out to a few of those sites, and it wasn't very pleasant at all.
Yeah, no.
We also, there was quite a lot of mines left lying around, and a lot of stuff was mine awareness and basically that sort of low scale information operations.
You're not really trying to turn too many people there. It seemed like you were just trying to get whatever information you could.
So Bosnia was up and running. I didn't get to go to Bosnia. Kosovo kicked off in the late 99, I suppose, mid 99 on Petong. So sort of November 1999, I'm flying out to Skopje on the border, waiting to go in. I thought, now, what have I got myself into?
That's normal. Now, did you find, did you have any points where you were doing any of your operations or your deployments where you found that what you were putting out there was changing hearts and minds or pulling in a lot of information?
My last tour of Afghan was in 2008-9. I was based in Helmand. My main role was radio in a box. Have you ever seen the radio in a box? Do you know what that is?
No.
Basically, it's a small 50-watt radio transmitter. Comes in a flight case. It's got the transmitter with it. It's got a media mixing desk, and it's got a cassette player or a CD player, and then you can also plug a laptop into it. And with the laptop, you can design a radio program, just putting songs in, putting sound bites in, putting messages in, putting news items in, and then plug it in, press play, press transmit, and it'll broadcast. We were down in Garmasir, which is in the south of our area. They'd had one of these radio in the boxes down there. My predecessor set it up. She was pretty useless, to be honest. Because everywhere I went that had these, that she'd put these boxes, none of them worked properly. None of them were tuned to the antenna for the frequency. So the one down in Garmasir, when it was fired up, and it wouldn't even broadcast outside the compound.
It's doing a good job.
Within 10 minutes of looking at this thing, retuning it, bang, I've got it pushing out. In Garmsey, the guys had cleared down through the district centre and had pushed south about 15 kilometres south. So about 10 miles south of the town, the district centre. Enabling the district centre to sort of come back alive a bit. And we spoke to the guys over the radios that we could reach, said, can you tune into this frequency? Can you hear us broadcasting? They said, yes, we could hear it. It's coming through fairly loud and clear down here. So we knew we were pushing out about 15 miles, about 15 kilometres, about 10 miles from the patrol base.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd only practiced that afternoon. We were just testing it to see if it worked. A little late that afternoon, two guys approached the camp holding up bits of paper. The guys on the gate were a little bit jumpy. They called these guys forward, and these bits of paper had written on, please can you play this particular song for us and our friends.
Nice.
Well, we haven't even gone live yet. We were due to go live the following morning. So anyway, we fired it up in the morning. We started broadcasting. I've got two interpreters, and I've been working with them all week about how they were going to work this program in the morning and what we were going to do for the program in the afternoon, because we only broadcast for a couple of hours in the morning, a couple of hours in the afternoon, because that's when people were listening to the radio. So that morning we had these guys like Smashy and Nicey. I mean, they were bouncing off of each other. They were great. I mean, I've been working with them all week, and they really got it. They were really keen to be proper DJs. They were putting the music on. They was one of them would read the music. Another one would be pressing the button to put out messages. I mean, about the district centre being safe to come into. The market was good and stuff like that. I suppose it was about lunchtime it started. We had a trail of guys coming with bits. This went on for a couple of days, and we got quite lots of bits of paper. And I said to the guys, we've been broadcasting for about 3 days. I said, I've noticed it's all boys or young men that's asking for this stuff. What about if we put in a couple of messages from girls that have asked their brothers to drop the note in for them to play tunes for them and their girlfriends? So we came up with a couple of local names, and bugger me, that afternoon we had about a dozen letters come from girls asking for songs to be played. So this was absolutely amazing. We've been broadcasting for about 4 days. I had a stack of paper about like that of all these messages. That is psychological operations.
Yep.
Measure
At its
of
core.
It was like dropping a bomb. You could see the effect, and there was the effect.
Yep.
Now, as you get people more engaged in these programs that you were playing, did you increase the frequency of messages that were not just the music?
No, everything was kind of driven by the guys back in Lashkar and the commander's mission. Basically, all we were trying to do is stabilise the area, get the district centres open, so people could come in safety to the markets. And that was the main thrust of what we were trying to do. Just trying to show people that we're there, we're working alongside the Afghan National Army, the Afghan National Police Service. We're trying to make the place safe for you guys to live your lives as normal as possible. We were putting out some stuff asking to report any terrorist activities, any Taliban were running around the area. Very, very minimal feedback we got on that. Occasionally we'll get a note from somebody, or if we were out on a patrol, somebody would sort of tip us the wink that
Mhm.
there was some funny people going on. But most of the time, no, it's very, very difficult to get that measure of effect on the target audience. Yeah, of course, the other problem that we have is that because of the way that we're doing business, rotating every 6 months, you get a new command come in. Lots of them didn't get what we were doing. I mean, we were trying to be, because the way the group operated, we had reach back. We were back briefing the oncoming teams, because what the group did at this stage, we were mounting a team 6 months prior to deploying. They would then do their work up, their pre-deployment training alongside the headquarters that they were going to support in the operation. So from day one, when that brigade was stood up, we stood up a team that went straight down, started talking to the commanders, started talking to the planners, started talking to the key players in that headquarters that we were going to support. With the teams out in theatre at the time, we were feeding back what we were doing on a weekly basis. We put a sit rep together. We'd have a call, probably once a fortnight, once every 3 weeks, to the team that were going to be replacing us, to let them know what we were doing, what the plans were, what products we were working on. So we tried to keep some sort of continuity. I was really lucky. I worked with 3 Commando Brigade, and those guys really get it. The paras took over from them, and they don't. It was really frustrating. I'd been working on a particular project in one particular village for quite a few months, and I'm just getting the village elders to come round. They were starting to see our way of thinking. We're gaining their trust, and then when they were doing the RIP, the replace in place, the paras came in, and the first patrol they went out on, they screwed the whole thing up and set the whole thing back by sort of treating the locals roughly. And as bloody heartbreaking. Yeah,
when you put in that much effort.
Yeah, but there again, I mean, it's what you do what you can, and you walk away.
Now, did you ever have any moments where you found that no matter what you put out, just never worked? If they were just pushed back constantly?
Oh yeah, most of the stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, psychological operations, any product that you're pushing out is really, really difficult to get any sort of feedback from. When we were when I was in Kabul in 2002, we came up with the concept of the ISAF news. And what it was a kind of a broadsheet, 4 sides of a A3 newspaper in 3 languages, English, Pashto and Dari. And it was all pretty much good news stories. I had some fantastic opportunities to go out and interview some really key people. I interviewed Hamid Karzai, Ashraf Ghani, the Minister of the Hajj, a few of the other key ministers. And when the lawyer Jirga was on, I was able to speak to lots and lots of people at the lawyer Jirga and get lots of information back that we could put into this newspaper. Going out all the time, getting stories for it and getting pictures to put it in it. And I had a really good team of interpreters that worked with me. And alongside this, we put out a questionnaire. So when this paper went out once a fortnight, and we had different places that we dropped it off around the city. And then we put an insert in with a questionnaire. So every paper that went out had a questionnaire in it. and it said where to drop these questionnaires back. And we got a big stack. I mean, a stack like that back, maybe 2,000 or 3,000 of these questionnaires back filled in. And I had an ink guy who was doing the number crunching on it, and it gave us some real insight and invaluable information on what people thought about ISAF, which then we were able to take this information and change some of the stuff that we were doing.
And in the end, did you see a positive outcome from that?
We certainly did in Kabul. I mean, I was there for just short of 6 months. I got in mid-January in 2002, and we handed over to the Turks in 2000 and on the 20th of June 2002. And from when we got there, I mean, you hardly saw anybody on the. I can tell a story about me flying into Kabul on early January. I got on a plane, a Brysnor, a VC-10, flew into Bahrain, and then we got onto a C-17, and we got the full body army, and we got the big plates and all the rest of it, Kevlar helmets, the lot, and weapons, everything. So we're taking off and we're flying in, and they came around with a message saying that we're going to do a tactical landing into Kabul airport.
Those are fun.
The tactical landing is they switch off all the lights and then they start throwing this thing around.
Yeah, they go straight vertical.
We're getting chucked around on this C-17, and then bang, we've hit the deck, and it's roared up and backed up down the runway. The back doors are opening, bitterly bloody cold out there, and it came to a stop, and we could just about make out this cloaked tent just behind us, and there's one of the movers there with his little dim lit torch, and he's waving us all off. We've got our bloody Bergens and everything, and he's made us pile them up on a hard standing just outside this tent. He's taken us into this tent, and he said, whatever you do, don't step off the hard standing. We haven't cleared all the mines yet. Well, I'm thinking, what have I got myself into this time? Anyway, they proceeded to give us this brief and telling us all about the nasty things that can bite and eat you there, and all the horrible diseases that you could get, and one thing and another. And then they piled us on the back of an Italian truck, and they drove us through the city. And the city at that time, it was quite late at night, and all you see was occasional sort of checkpoints where they got a sort of a drum fire going, and a few of these mujahideen stood around with their AK-47s looking at us all sort of weird, like thinking, fucking hell, what have I done now? They dropped us off at what was the university building in Kabul, opposite what was Radio Television Kabul. And then just down the road was the American embassy from that. So bitterly cold. It was about -20.
Nice.
So, and all we've got is a epoxy 12 by 12 tent. And no
those don't hold in any heat either.
No. Well, it didn't have any heat to put on.
No, they're good against the wind though.
Anyway, having had a bit of a shivery night, woke up in the morning and got bloated and all the rest of it, and then we got together as a team. We went and had a chat with the commander, who used to be one of the officers in my battalion a few years back in Cellar. so he knew me from then, and we got on like house on fire and had a really good chat. We explained what we were there to do. He totally got it, and we were there to support his mission, and his mission was to make the place stable.
Now, having spent so much time there and interacting with the local population, how did you feel watching the most recent events in the Middle East and Kabul especially?
to say I was disappointed was something of an understatement.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, yeah, that was going around.
I felt like the Americans did in Macedonia when the Twin Towers hit.
Mhm.
I wanted to go and kill Biden.
Mm.
And I would have done it with my bare hands.
Yeah,
I
that
mean-
was they screwed the pooch on that one.
I mean, the bit that really rubs is the Americans only had around about 2,500 troops in Afghanistan at the time to support the ANA with air power.
Mhm.
That was it. 2,500 troops. He could have quite happily just left them there supporting. They pretty much weren't in much danger. They were flying ops, dropping the odd bomb, helping the ANA out, keeping the Taliban under wraps.
Yeah,
Too
we
much
saw
politics got
exactly.
involved, though.
It's true. We saw exactly how much effect that 2,500 troops was having when we
Yeah.
pulled out, and they immediately overran the entire place.
Yeah. And I don't think it's because the ANA were cowards. I mean, they are really good fighting troops. I mean, let's face it, nobody's ever in the history of Afghanistan stayed there long
No.
to control the country. I mean, the Afghans have always managed to kick people out.
Mhm.
But I think, I mean, I spent a huge amount of time over the years looking into Afghan culture. I did 3 tours of Afghanistan, and my main focus was the Pashtun. And to try and get your head into Pashtu Wali, which is their ethos, their infrastructure, the way that they're thinking,
Mhm.
can really mess you up.
I mean, I think there was too many. I think politics got involved there on our end. And one thing that Jerry and I had theorized was that we wanted to get out of there, and we knew that no matter what, it was going to turn into this. So they just said, "Screw it, rip it off like a band-aid," and they expected this.
I mean, the issue I've got is I've still got friends there, and
Oh,
they're still
absolutely.
stuck there. One of my friends was killed by the Taliban a little while ago. My other friend, who's here now, his father and brother were killed while they were looking for him. I've got 2 other friends that are there trying to get out at the moment. They've got the permissions and everything, but the physical part of trying to get a visa and to leave the country safely is a real challenge for them.
It's almost impossible right now.
I mean, our government has said to them that if they can get to a third country, they'll get them here.
Mm.
But because we haven't got anybody on the ground in Afghanistan, there's not a lot they can do to support them to get out.
Can you imagine that if you were in country and your government was just like, "We can't help you," especially when you're in the military and like you always have that in the back of your head that you have this support structure behind you.
Yeah,
And then it's like, oh yeah, worst case, like if I'm still alive, I got a plane ride home. Nope. Now you got to hoof it into the next surrounding country. Like that's got to jack with your head.
Yeah, I mean, these interpreters laid their lives on the line for us.
Oh, absolutely.
Went out and they were there all the time. I mean, we handed them over to each successive team who used and abused them, took them out on the ground, and we lost a couple. We lost one member of our team. You may have heard the first female British soldier killed in Afghanistan in 2007. A lovely young girl, Sarah Bryant. She was a gutsy girl. I was on the team that trained her up to go out, and she did everything that we asked of her. She'd jump on the machine gun, on the general purpose machine gun. She'd jump on a minigun. She'd keep up with the guys on the tabs and everything during the build-up training. She was very intelligent. I mean, she was in corps, so she was our int analyst out there. and she was going out to Natalie with some of our special forces guys to do a particular job, and on the way there they got hit by an IED. I mean, that was a real blow. I mean, that was a real dark time for the group to lose somebody of that caliber. And that's the only one we've actually lost, but it's it still rubs to this day.
Oh, absolutely.
I've lost quite a few other friends there as well.
I also think with the way we pulled out of Afghanistan, it hurts us going forward too. You know, if we're in another country and we want a translator or something like that, and they saw how we treated everyone in Afghanistan,
yeah,
are they going to help us?
That's the unintended consequences of what they've done. And that's really and the other side of it now is that the unfolding humanitarian crisis that is going on in Afghanistan, with somewhere around about 20 million people starving to death.
Yeah,
because the Taliban hasn't got the resources to be able to do anything, or the infrastructure, or the knowledge to be able to run the country effectively.
Yeah, we've actually seen them on the news going on and trying to, what seems like trying to build a relationship to make up for what they're missing. But that's not going exactly very well for them.
Well, they were in Norway last week. A contingent of Taliban came to Norway to speak to, I think, NATO leaders or something like that, trying to get some sort of recognition to be able to get some funds released to be able to feed themselves, I suppose, because I don't suppose they'll will look after the general population very well.
No,
it's also a horrible time. It's also a horrible time to not know what you're doing. The whole world is having issues right now, and you're just trying to get a country up on its feet. It's not working very well right now.
And I think that the difference between the last time that the Taliban were in and this time is that the country's had pretty much 20 years of relatively stability. And you've got a whole generation that have only known that effectively stable life. Girls have been able to go to school in that time where they didn't before. And the rug has been pulled from under them. And they are the ones that I really, really feel for. They just, I mean, they just stepped back 20 years.
Yeah, they just performed a 180.
Yeah, and I think you may see in the not too distant future. I mean, they've already started rebelling, and you've seen the protests of women and girls on the streets.
Yeah,
and when the news cameras were in there, they weren't getting treated particularly well. And
that corner of the world's not known for that, really.
Yeah, I had a message from my friend today who's stuck there. He's trying to get out with his family, and gave a list of atrocities that have been happening to former guys that worked for the NATO, ISAF, and different militaries and NGOs, and they're dragging them out of houses and killing them.
Yeah.
And they're actively now going around looking for these people and dealing with them in a particularly horrible way.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I don't think there's much that the U.S. can do now. I mean, I think we screwed that pooch entirely, and I think we all know it. Now, the only thing is hopefully we learn from it,
Yeah. Well, as far as I can see, there's nobody else could be able to go in there to be able to sort it out. You can't. Russia wouldn't be allowed back in there, not after the last time.
Nope, we're
China,
not.
China is making an awful lot of moves.
Yeah.
I think that's where the biggest threat is going to come from for Afghanistan, because I think the Chinese will probably come around to recognizing the Taliban and start. I mean, they've already started buying up all the lithium, and they'll go in there and they'll absolutely rape the mineral wealth of the country. And I don't think Afghanistan will benefit from the Chinese going in there.
No, it's kind of the same thing that they've been doing with Africa, where China's been moving into African nations, essentially doing the same thing, taking advantage of the unstable political climate to get resources. And because the Middle East is so much closer, I'd imagine they're just going to step it up even more for that.
Yeah.
Well, they're right on their doorstep.
Yeah,
Well,
I mean, look, happened in Zimbabwe. It used to be Rhodesia. I mean, when it was Rhodesia, it was known as the breadbasket of Africa. It pretty much fed the whole of Africa. When Robert Mugabe took over, renamed the country, started killing the white farmers, it started taking a nosedive, and now it's as bad as everywhere else. It can't produce enough food to feed itself.
It's interesting. We talked with one of the farmers.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we had one of the farmers on who's no longer safely or legally allowed back into Africa.
Yeah. He had death threats while he was farming. He had even more because he wasn't paying the local government the bribe money that they wanted him to pay. And effectively, they threw him in jail for it. I believe that's what they threw him in jail for. I mean, just, it's a fascinating story.
Well, I think the world stage is going to be occupied in the coming future here, in the very near future, with what's happening with Russia.
Well, Ukraine.
The United States pulled out of the Middle East just in time to contemplate getting sent over to Ukraine. How's that viewed where you guys are, even with Brexit? How does that affect the whole situation for you?
Well, we've just sent another 1,000 troops over to Ukraine. We already had a few troops in there providing what do you call it? Support, training and support. I think we're now sending a few more troops in just to back them up in case when
lights off.
Order.
Now, as someone who has so much experience in PSYOPS, when you look at situations like Russia and Ukraine, can you see pretty obviously what they're doing for their PSYOPS there? Is that something that stands out to you?
It's pretty obvious that that Putin is just flexing his muscles to see how far he can push Biden, basically. And Biden, as far as I can see, is a complete and utter cluster.
There's a lot of Americans that would agree with you.
I mean, from what I've seen of him on his news conferences, he can barely read the auto cue. And he reads out exactly what's on the auto cue. And I don't even think he knows what day of the week it is half the time.
Yeah, he's too old.
Yeah, he's been catching a lot of flack from even people that are on his side and voted for him, because he, it's typical standard American way, is he ran a campaign based on a lot of promises that he's completely walked back now. That's pretty much every president we've had in recent memory, though. So there's nothing new
our
there.
lifetimes.
Yeah.
I mean, the bit I find difficult to understand is that I think America is somewhere about 258 million people.
I think we're up to 330 million now.
Yeah.
And that's the best you can come up with?
The problem is the rest of us say, why would I ever want to get into politics?
Yeah, there is that.
And it's so corrupt now, and none of us want anything to do with it. And a lot of good Americans, because there's plenty of them out there, just want nothing to do with it. And it's just, we look at it and we see it's a disaster, And we see no matter who you put in there, nothing's going to happen. Nothing that you want's going to happen. They're constantly fighting each other. And, that's where we're at, which is a shitty place to be.
Yeah.
But
I mean, even Trump, with all his rhetoric and all the rest of it, he was probably one of the best presidents you've had in the last 50 years. At least
he was different.
One of the presidents that, or probably the only president that didn't take you guys into another war.
Yeah, I never would have seen Biden taking us into another war, though. And I think he got out of Afghanistan because of political pressure. And
I think that's going to come back and bite him in the arse.
Oh, absolutely.
Because that's why Putin is flexing his muscles on Ukraine, and China is poised like a coiled spring to go and screw over Taiwan. And once they've done that, and Biden's done nothing about it, they'll roll into Hong Kong and screw that place.
Yeah, China's got an interesting one. I can't see. I would have expected his reaction to Ukraine to be his reaction with Taiwan. You know what I mean? Like with the way they're pushing on Taiwan, I would have. He seems very hard on the Ukraine. I would have expected that on Taiwan, but
yeah,
obviously not.
I don't know who's advising him, but they ain't doing a particularly good job of it.
Well, that's another issue.
I don't foresee the next presidency being a whole lot better. I don't think it's going to be Biden this time around, because as you guys can see across the pond watching him on the news, I don't think he can handle a second term.
I don't think he can handle the first term.
That's a true story. He's not really doing anything for the American people.
No.
But generally speaking, how do you guys in the UK view the United States as a whole right now with everything going on? Is this something you guys talk about amongst yourselves? You just kind of ignore us whenever you can?
I think at the present moment in time, we've got our own dramas to try and worry about.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't know whether you've seen this Partygate going on with Boris.
I was to say the political leaders on the other side of the pond are having their own issues.
Yes, Boris looks like a mess too.
They just decided to kick off about Boris having a few party after work get-togethers in the garden when the rest of us were all locked down, and they kicked off about that. And Sir Keir Starmer did exactly the same, but he did his inside. Oh, but they were working. So they're all bloody hypocrites.
Oh, absolutely. But I think that's politics in general.
We've got so much more that's more pressing to worry about than who had a bloody party 2 years ago. I mean, look at the problem we've got with the Article 16 and the Northern Ireland Protocol. I mean, that's basically screwing Northern Ireland. The EU are taking absolute liberties with us. Mm. And I think Lord David Frost has been saying they've met the criteria to invoke Article 16 several times, months ago.
What's Article 16?
It's the protocol to the way that the EU are invoking all the a border down the Irish Sea, basically.
Oh, that's right, because they have their borders in the middle of the water, right?
So basically, Northern Ireland's been cut off from the rest of the UK, and they're doing checks on 20% of all the goods that are moving around the EU are on that Irish border, which is outrageous. I mean, that's practically 90% of everything that moves across the Irish Sea and the Irish border. So
now, why are they all going there? Just because of the port?
They're just taking the mickey out of us. They're just taking a piss.
Yeah.
This is the EU's tactics.
Oh, so they're doing it just to screw you guys out of taxes
Yeah.
and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and it's hurting the people of Northern Ireland. I mean, at one stage they couldn't even send any drugs over there from us because it didn't meet the new EU criteria. Although, when you look at it, the UK's standards are far higher than the EU's on everything.
Mm.
So the game that they're playing is they want us to have the same standards as them on everything.
Mm.
But we're not prepared to lower our standards down to theirs.
Mm.
And that's part of the problem. So the only real solution for us is for Boris to grow a pair of balls and say to the EU, invoke Article 16, revoke the Northern Ireland Protocol, and go full WTO rules on the EU.
Mhm.
And if they want to stick tariffs on us, fine. If they want to build a border across Northern Ireland, let them. But we don't want it. All we want is a fair trade agreement. And what they're trying to do is stop us from trading. They're not happy that we're trading with the rest of the world on WTO rules. We've signed about 60 or 70 new trade agreements with the rest of the world.
Well, I think the EU really took it personally the way the UK went.
Yeah. Well, they treated us as a cash cow, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, we were paying a huge amount. I think we were number 2 or 3 on the contributors into the EU.
Yeah.
And that's left a massive, great hole. We were paying more than 19 of the bottom countries into the EU. We've always been a net contributor than a receiver from the EU. And the bit that I find really, really amusing is that they're saying, "Oh, but we're giving out EU money." No, you're not. You're giving out. There's no such thing as government money. There's no such thing as government handouts. It's taxpayers' handouts that they're giving away, and this is where I guess it's a psyop, isn't it? It's propaganda. They call it government money.
Yep.
They call it government handouts. It ain't. It's taxpayers' money. It's taxpayers' handouts.
Yeah, we actually have a similar conversation here in the United States about how we phrase that, because right now we have issues with government handouts going to corporations, which you guys have probably seen on the news, where we bail out all the big companies every time something happens.
I mean, we did it with the banks a few years ago.
Yeah,
but we didn't do it with the farmers or the fishermen.
Yeah. Well, it's the corporations that are paying, in the back pockets of the politicians. Now in the United States, when they decide to bail out a corporation, the government phrases it as, they're too big to fail. We need them for the economy. And they're calling it a government bailout. But the American people recognize that it's actually our taxpayer money that they're giving away to companies that are already taking money away from us to begin with.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this goes right back to being a big PSYOP for the government as far as how they're presenting this to the people.
Yeah. And the problem is that, yes, we get the vote, but the problem is, unless they make, like, this is the one good thing that I like about what Australia do, they've made voting compulsory. If you're the legal age voter in Australia, you have to turn to on election day and vote. Whether you mess up your paper or not, but you have to go to the voting station and vote.
I don't know if that would be good or bad here.
Well, we're going the other way. We're going the other way in the United States. They're trying to limit how many people can get to a voting booth.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I'm just saying, think about all the people, Jerry. You want all of them voting?
I think whether I agree with them or not,
Yeah,
in principle, I think every person in the United States that can vote should be voting.
All right.
Yeah, I mean that's something that I saw in 2002 in Kabul.
Yeah.
When they gave the vote to everybody, including women, and you saw them queuing up, getting their biometrics done on the passports to go and vote.
Yeah, they all had the purple thumbs
at the voting booths, and pretty much everybody that was eligible to vote did, because they had fought for it.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. It had a lot of meaning then, and I think in America it's lost a lot of that meaning.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
It's also been lost in this country. I mean,
Mm.
you take the suffragettes back in the 20s, a lot of them were brutally beaten and killed, but they got the vote in the end.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of lost, and that's why I think they should have a proper voter ID card of some sort, so you cannot vote without a proper voter ID.
Mm.
And you should make voting compulsory, and there should be a penalty if you don't turn up to use your vote. You get charged something for it.
Is that what happens in Australia if they don't turn out?
Yep. Yeah,
Okay.
There's a consequence if they don't vote. I mean, you can go into the voting booth and you can destroy your voting paper, but you've gone to register that vote. Whether you vote for anybody or not is irrelevant. You have to turn to vote.
Interesting.
That is the way to do it, I think. And the other part is trying to engage people to. I mean, our voting system over here is first past the post, which is and isn't a good system.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a particularly good system because at the moment we've only got two parties that kind of get the vote. I mean, Boris had the vote in 2019 and he got an 80-seat majority in the House of Commons.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much that gives him a good platform to be able to push through pretty much anything he wants.
In America now, I think there's a big mix of people who are either saying, I don't like who I have to vote. I don't like my choices, so I'm just not going to.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're voting third party or whatever. And it's, we had this discussion, I think it's going to air next week, actually, that as far as American presidents go, what was the last president who did anything that was really notable?
George Bush.
Well, but even then, if you go 100 years from now, do you think they'll remember him? Do you know what I'm saying? Do you think 100 years from now, do you think he'll be remembered?
He might be remembered for sending you into an illegal war.
I wonder if that'll even be remembered though in 100 years.
Yeah, I mean, Fortunately, I only did one tour of Iraq. Yeah. And it's the one place that I've been that I never wish to go back to.
What was it about Iraq that had left that taste in your mouth?
It's a bloody horrible place. we were down in Basra. I was based at the headquarters at the APOD at the airport in just outside Basra. I had the opportunity. We travelled around quite a lot. They gave us the best vehicles I've ever had, actually, for driving around in. They gave us a couple of big GMC Envoys, proper big gas guzzlers. And they do like 120 mile an hour down the motorway. Whoa, they're great. So our small team just went out in these. My task was to come up with a campaign to build up the credibility of the Iraqi police service in the eyes of the Iraqis.
Now, do you think that they deserved having that credibility built up?
I'm going to say no.
it was probably the most senseless task I've ever been given.
It's hard when
You're
you're given a
absolute-
task you don't believe in.
Well, I mean, from a PSYOPS point of view, it was a really good task because of the opportunities it gave me to get out and about.
Mhm.
I spent quite a bit of time up in Nazaré with the Italians and going out into Nazaré to the police station there, chatting with the police, the chief of police, some of the other police officers, trying to get their view on how they operate. We went up to a Samwa where the Dutch were and where the Japanese came into. And that was an interesting little exercise in itself. We went up there to advise the Dutch on how to go about letting the general population around the area know that the Japanese were coming to town and they were going to be doing some engineering tasks. This is the first time Japanese military had ever conducted operations outside of Japan since the Second World War. That's how big this operation was. And the biggest fear that they had was that a Japanese soldier got injured or killed on this operation.
Right.
And the Dutch basically shitting themselves. So we went up there and we gave the Dutch a few good ideas and how to go about informing the locals that these guys were coming to do some specific projects to help out the locals, basically. And I think it was just rebuilding some schools and with a little bit of infrastructure, just as a token operation, which was. I met some of the Japanese, and it was fascinating, absolutely fascinating the way that they operate.
Oh yeah.
So it was, from that point of view, it was really good. We also went over to a Samwa in the sort of the east of the country, just on the Euphrates, and I don't know whether you guys ever heard, but we had 6 military police shot dead in this village. It was a horrible, horrible feeling in this whole sort of small town. You just felt that so uncomfortable there. And I didn't like that place at all.
Now it sounds like a lot of your PSYOPs were based around gaining cooperation from people wherever you happen to be. Did you ever get assigned a PSYOP project where the goals were a little more devious? You know, not necessarily trying to build cooperation and improve your standing with the locals. Maybe something like trying to destabilize an area, like you see Russia do that with some of their PSYOPs type stuff.
Yeah. Personally, I didn't. I only did what we term white PSYOPs.
Okay.
I did hear that somebody, it wasn't us, was using text messaging service to send messages to different warlords saying that some other warlord was talking to certain people that he shouldn't have been, wasn't, but ended up
just to stir things up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, basically. And apparently some of these guys didn't make it to the end of the day. But I mean that's only sort of rumors. I have no idea whether there was a lot of truth in it.
Yeah. Now, the reason I asked that is because in the last few years, it became apparent and publicized that, especially on social media, Russia was taking part in a lot of misinformation campaigns. And I think China is known to do that on social media as well. Now, we only see it here in the United States from our perspective because we're a common target for them to put out misinformation. I don't know what that would look like at your end.
Well, I did an interview with a journalist a little while ago, and she asked me about 77 Brigade. Apparently, the Chinese have been operating under the name of 77 Brigade. Now, 15 UK PSYOPS group got re-rolled to or moved into this new brigade called 77 Brigade, which took in the media ops teams and the CIMIC teams and PSYOPS. So they came under one sort of influence umbrella, for want of another word. But she seemed to think that 77 Brigade has something to do with sending out messages on social media that was clandestine. But from what I understand, 77 Brigade operated under the same doctrine and rules and processes that 15 PSYOPS did back in the day when I was on the group. And I couldn't see them get involved in that type of black PSYOPS. And I've since found out recently, actually, that no, the group as a group have now lost quite a lot of corporate knowledge on what we were doing. Yes, they can operate the equipment, but they lost effectively the corporate knowledge art of conducting psychological operations.
Which is interesting because usually in a military unit, even if if you have a whole platoon of guys who are older and they all just end up retiring at the same day, you still have all sorts of things that usually pass on the knowledge, but if it's all going at once, there's some other stuff happening there.
Well, I think that the issue that we've had, particularly with certainly in 15 PSYOPS group, and I think that's gone on to 77 Brigade, is the way that we bring people into the unit. They take people from all three services. They come in to do a 2-year stint and then go again. Now that in itself is an issue, because you get somebody posted in that's maybe an infantry soldier or maybe a sort of a mechanic of some sort, or just a young officer coming in from an engineer unit or something like that. They haven't got a background in media of any sort. So then you've got to teach them how about PSYOPS. By the time they've done a build up, they've done an operation.
Yeah, they're gone.
They've learned the hard way. They come back, they go.
Yeah.
Lost. We had, originally the group was set up with 8 regulars and 28 reservists. Now the reservists that they recruited all came with a background in some form of media. So they've already got that kind of corporate knowledge of the industry, of influence or media. And that core of 28 stayed there, which I was one of them. I was on the group for 10 years. Out of that 10 years, 8 of those years I was on full-time contracts. So that was basically my job. I was brought in. I used to be a regular. I left the regulars, and then I went into our reserves, and then I was recruited from the reserves, and then I got offered contracts to do full-time reserve to go on operations, which is why I ended up doing 7 operational tours in the discipline. So I got a huge amount of corporate knowledge on actual operational experience. Now, when they went over to 77 Brigade, they kind of mistreated. When I came back from Afghanistan in 2009, the group had recruited, they were at full strength with regular soldiers, coming in for 2 years at a time.
Yeah.
They weren't in a position to be able to give me another contract. I had 2 choices. I could go back onto the reserve cadre, where I would have been promoted again to be a warrant officer, or I could look around and for another post somewhere else. I was offered a couple of jobs. I could have gone up to I branch to be an instructor on the interrogation branch. Didn't really fancy that. I used to go up there quite a lot to do role play when I was in camp, which was great fun on the courses. I got offered to do to go around briefing units on counter-terrorism. That meant doing an awful lot of traveling, and I really didn't fancy that. And I saw this job come up on a jobs board in London as a welfare officer for the foot guards. That quite took my fancy. Applied for it, got it. I was the first one in to this brand new role, had a blank sheet of paper. What can I say?
Now, when you say the foot guards, you're talking about the actual guards at Buckingham?
The ones you see on Buckingham Palace and Tower of London and Windsor Castle. So basically, I was given what was called 9 Maiden Company Grenadier Guards. So I had effectively about 120 guys that I did welfare support for.
How bad is their foot care?
Not too bad, actually. I mean,
like they got to be miserable.
I mean, these guys. Let's face it. They are. They're not the brightest tools in the box.
Yeah. Okay. I could say that
like
that's our guards.
So these guys stood outside the palaces and stuff like that, and they come straight out of training to us, to the company, and so they've done their basic training, they've done their trade training as infantry soldiers, and then they've come to us as phase 3 training, which is the ceremonial piece, because that's what guards are. So young lads coming out of training come with their own sets of problems.
Yeah.
I mean, all young lads, they're given £1,000 a month beer tokens, and they're in London.
Yep. A little headstrong.
Yeah. So they come down and they're learning to do the ceremonial piece. And for me, some of the problems that they came with was obviously money issues, girlfriend issues.
That's the normal young military issue.
Yeah, normal young guy stuff, which is fairly easy to deal with most of the time. I mean, they run out of money halfway through the month. They haven't got enough money to go and eat. So you sort out, get them a hungry soldier cheer, and at the end of the month, they pay it back. And then the cycle starts again.
The cycle goes again.
They go and push out the wall of first millionaires weekend after payday. Hungry soldier.
We had that too. It was no one was eating in the mess hall on the 1st and the 15th, but then 2 days later it was packed.
Yeah. So they were the issues. So I had an awful lot of time on my hands, and I had a blank piece of paper to do what I wanted with this job. I came from a background of I was a skier. I'm a telemark skier. I'm a Nordic instructor. I'm a sailor. So I set up expeditions and trips for guys to go skiing, to go take part in competitions, to go sailing. So I did an awful lot of adventurous training. I also took a few liberties and got myself into doing a few of the guards. So I've done all the guards as a sergeant, as the senior sergeant on Buckingham Palace Guard, which is boring actually, because as a senior sergeant, you sit there and you haven't really got much to do. Just make sure that the corporals are taking the guys out.
Yeah, you only have something to do when something goes horribly wrong.
Yeah. And generally, if something did, the police dealt with it anyway. I mean, the guys are there just for the public.
Yeah, they're a tourist show.
They're a tourist attraction.
Yep.
I did the senior sergeant job over at the St James's Palace, and that's another nice duty. Again, not a huge amount to do for the senior sergeant. And then I did the senior sergeant down at the Tower of London, and that's quite good because the senior sergeant actually gets to do something.
I still got to imagine though that the guards at Buckingham Palace's feet have to kill at the end of the day. Like those shoes can't be supportive.
No, the boots. I mean, they're really. I mean, the drill boots are really good boots. I mean, they're sturdy boots.
Yeah. Are they wearing your normal military boots? I thought they were wearing like dress shoes.
No,
I haven't seen them.
These are proper full-on ammunition boots.
Okay.
I mean, they're a proper boot, and what they do with them to get them as shiny as they do, they melt beeswax into the boot. So
right.
And from that, then they layer polish up. I've got a pair in the back room there. Kept my boots. Don't know where rocking. I'll show you. I've got over yeah. Let's pull that. There's, there's my collection of stuff. So I've got this end here is my bearskin and greatcoat. Then I've got my number 2 dress, and then there's my mess dress and my number 1 dress. And then I've got all sorts of knickknacks here on the top. So
you have the normal military bling.
Yeah, so I've got all the little bits of bling and everything like that that were all buckshoe when I left. So I didn't have to hand it in, and I managed to keep it. And I put it in here because what I've done is this is my studio, so it deadens the noise. It doesn't echo quite so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, the wool absorbs all that.
Yeah. So instead of having sort of treated walls, I put stuff around that kind of soaks up the echo.
Now, speaking of having left, it sounds like your life was basically chock full of adventure after adventure. What did you end up doing once you got out and you didn't have that to keep your time busy anymore?
Well, I joined the army on the 5th of August 1974 into the Depot the Queen's Division as an infantry soldier in the Royal Anglian Regiment.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a full career, and then I left the regulars and pretty much transferred across to the reserves.
Mm-hmm.
And I did just short of, or just over a year on SAS selection, and I failed because I picked up an injury and found myself in the hospital. So that ended that. Then I had a year or two off just on regular reserves. So I turned up once a year show me kit because I still had a reserve liability. And then I had the opportunity to rejoin the TA into a signals unit. And I did that for about 3 years before I got picked up and went to the PSYOPS unit.
Yeah.
Then I did 10 years in PSYOPS. I rebadged back to being a Royal Anglian because that was, I had a bit of a ruck down doing a course at the School of Signals with one of the training staff down there, and I thought that the signals treated me rather badly. So I spoke to my regimental headquarters, spoke to the colonel of the regiment, and yes, he said I could come back under the banner of Royal Anglian, which I did. When I came back in 2009, I already got a job in London, and I spent 8 years as a welfare officer in London. And then the 4th of April 2018, I retired at the age of 60.
Okay.
And we moved down to where we live now in Gosport, which is, do you know Gosport? Have you heard of it? Opposite Portsmouth. You've got Portsmouth, you've got the Isle of Wight, Southampton. So we live between, just opposite Portsmouth in Gosport. We moved down here because I had a boat. I had a Hellberg Rusty 36 that we've been sailing for quite a lot of years. And unfortunately, I'm starting to fall to bits. So rather than have the problem of where I can't get on the boat and do anything, we sold her last year.
Oh, bummer.
Yeah,
which hurts. However, I've got lots of mates that have got boats, and I can go and jump on a boat anytime I like.
Now, Andy, this reminds me, I don't think I told you about this, but just last week, because I actually love the ocean and I've never owned a boat, but just last week,
hilarious because you can't swim.
I swim well enough. I wouldn't die if I fell overboard. Just don't leave me there.
The water's going on, not in.
So I was actually just looking last week at sailboats, and I was telling my wife, I'm pretty sure I want to get one.
Yeah,
my wife's the sailboat. Give me the motor power.
I was actually looking at Catalina 34. It says they're plentiful over here.
Yeah.
So yeah, Jerry, you're gonna have to learn to swim.
I told you I can swim.
You get a boat, you don't go swimming. It's
going
not in.
It's true. It's true.
That's right. I'm going to be on my sailboat, not under it.
Yeah.
See, I like to be under it.
Well, actually, Tim, Andy here and my wife both scuba dive. I don't scuba dive because my ears don't equalize the way they need to when I go deep. So I'm perfectly fine boating these guys around while they jump off.
Yeah, but you can't go scuba diving off a sailboat. That doesn't work well.
Yes, you can.
You
can, but it just doesn't work well.
Guys that do it.
Yeah?
Yeah. Quite a few guys that go scuba diving and diving off of boats. Because you've got to swim there to the back, you get back on again, no problem at all.
Yeah, no. Put me underwater any day. It's back there. There you go.
I find it really difficult trying to breathe underwater.
That's why you gotta have the scuba rig.
Yeah, so even with that, I'll get a panic on them.
Oh yeah, I know plenty of guys like that.
Well, now we know Andy does not have any interest in a respectable sport like sailing. Tim, what have you been working on? You have a podcast, right?
Yeah, I do. It's the Tim Heale podcast. It started off, I'll tell you about my podcast and how I actually got into it.
Definitely.
It was during lockdown, and we've been locked down for a couple of months from I think it was about March 2020, and I was drinking an awful lot of spiced rum. Too much spiced rum, and I thought, this carries on, it ain't going to end well. I thought, what can I do? And because I had this skill set of being able to record audio and edit in Adobe Audition, I thought, why? Because I was working on ancestry at the time, and I'd picked up on my great-grandfather, who came from where I live now, down in Gosport, where he actually lived in Portsmouth. And he was a chief stoker in the Royal Navy. And I'd love to have spoke to him about his time in the Navy and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to happen.
No.
So I thought to myself, why don't I tell my story, record it for my daughter, my granddaughter, and any great-grandchildren that I get in years to come, and they'll have that opportunity to listen to what I did. So I ended up doing 24 half-an-hour episodes of me talking about my life, right from the beginning, right up to the present day. I've got that.
So you
done.
still spend PSYOPs?
Well, yeah, I mean that's part of it. I mean, that's
Yeah, absolutely. When you were talking about it early in the episode, I was like, man, we're doing that right now.
Yeah.
When we go to edit an episode, that's what you were doing.
So I got to the end of that. I thought, what do I do now? So I did a couple more in-depth episodes of a few trips I'd done. I did 6 trips down to Morocco for a friend of mine driving a truck. And funny enough, that one's had the most hits out of all my episodes. Then I thought, what do I do now? I've talked about my life to death. So if people suffer from insomnia, put my podcast on.
Everyone's got a story.
Yeah. And that
you
was
just
it.
got to get it out of them.
So that was it. Everybody's got a story. Why don't I start doing other people? So the first one that I did was my mother. I mean, she's 82. I don't think she's going to be around much longer. Well, if she carries on spending my inheritance the way she does. So I did with mum, and then I started doing some friends, and it went on from there. And I'm up to 119 episodes on the podcast alone.
There you go.
So just recently, I've spread my wings a little bit. I've sort of kind of dried up with trying to get people in because COVID and all the rest of the malarkey. So I started up another series where I just get on and have a bit of a rant about what's going on, and they're quite funny, I think. So I've had a bit of feedback and saying people like my thirsty Thursday rants. And the YouTube is, if you type in Tim Heale podcast, that'll come up.
Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up. And Tim, we're gonna make sure our listeners get to check out what you've got going on, your YouTube and your podcast. But we appreciate you being on, and it's been a great time. Grizz, I know he wasn't exactly as excited as you are right now, but he had some wild times.
He did. I enjoyed it. I mean, I understand he was just trying to tell a story and stuff, but as we've talked about before, everyone's got their stories. Yeah.
And, there's just, I liked his perspective on modern times, modern politics, and the things that are going on now, especially as a guy who's lived through quite a few politics.
But either way, hopefully you guys enjoyed this one. Thank you again for listening to Beautiful Bastards. New episodes every Monday. Remember to like and subscribe. That last hand nearly killed me.
Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, why the hell am I here?